It started with laughter, the kind that fills a warm, crowded room and makes everything feel whole. My family gatherings had always been like that, loud, affectionate, chaotic, and comforting. Until one year, everything shattered. My name is Ava Mitchell, and this is how my perfect life fell apart and how I made sure those who destroyed it never forgot what I did next. My husband, Ethan, was the kind of man people admired at first glance, charming, handsome, and endlessly polite. My cousin, Haley, on the other hand, was beautiful in a way that made everyone turn their heads, confident yet sly behind that innocent smile. Growing up, we were inseparable. She was my best friend, my sister in everything but blood. When Ethan first met my family, Haley and he got along easily, maybe too easily. But I brushed it off. Why wouldn't my husband and my cousin get along? For years, our marriage seemed perfect from the outside. We had a lovely home, steady jobs, and dreams of starting a family. The cracks began small, Ethan working late nights, being too tired for dinner, guarding his phone like it held nuclear secrets. Haley started visiting more often too, saying she missed girl time. I never doubted her. After all, she was family. But one evening changed everything. It was a Friday night, and Ethan claimed he had a work trip to Chicago. I stayed home, deciding to visit my aunt the next morning. But when I got there, Haley wasn't around. Her mom said she'd gone out of town too. Something in me twisted. I checked social media, scrolled through Haley's tagged photos, and there it was. A hotel picture. The same one Ethan had sent me earlier, claiming it was for a business dinner. In the background, reflected faintly in a mirror, was Haley. My chest tightened. The air felt like shards of glass. I wanted to scream, to confront them, to destroy everything right then. But instead, I smiled. I waited. Revenge, I decided, would taste better cold, served at the place where they thought they'd never be exposed, the annual Mitchell family gathering. Over the next months, I played the part of the loving wife. Ethan didn't suspect a thing. Haley and I kept talking, laughing over coffee, planning family events. I documented everything, the texts, the receipts, the phone records. I even hired a private investigator, just to make sure the truth would be bulletproof. When the day of the family gathering arrived, the house was glowing with fairy lights. Everyone was there, grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles. Ethan stood beside me, smiling as though our marriage was unshakable. Haley showed up in a crimson dress, the kind that screamed attention. She hugged me, feigning warmth. I smiled back, my heart icy calm. Dinner began with laughter, clinking glasses, and stories. Ethan bragged about his job. Haley gushed about her new boyfriend. Oh, the irony. I waited until dessert. Then I stood, tapping my glass lightly. Before we start the toast, I said, my voice sweet and steady, I wanted to share something special with everyone. The lights dimmed slightly. I connected my phone to the TV screen, pretending it was a photo slideshow. A little recap of this year, I said. Pictures of family outings, vacations, and birthdays filled the screen. Everyone smiled. Then came a photo, Ethan and Haley together in that Chicago hotel, lips locked, time-stamped. The room went silent. Gasps rippled through the air. My aunt covered her mouth. My father stood, furious. Ethan went pale. Haley stammered, Ava, this isn't what it looks like, but I cut her off. Oh, it's exactly what it looks like. But wait, there's more. Video clips rolled, hotel lobby cameras, receipts, text screenshots projected large for everyone to see. Ethan lunged for the remote, but my brother blocked him. I stood still, watching their world crumble. I wanted to thank my husband, I said calmly, for teaching me what betrayal looks like. And my cousin for showing me that family doesn't always mean loyalty. I raised my glass. Cheers to new beginnings, without either of you. Haley ran out sobbing. Ethan followed, begging me to stop. I didn't. I'd already filed for divorce 2 days earlier, ensuring everything was in my name, the house, the car, even part of his business shares I'd helped him build. When he realized that, his face twisted in disbelief. You can't do this, he growled. I smiled coldly. Watch me. The fallout was swift and brutal. Haley's reputation in the family was shredded. Her parents disowned her for embarrassing them. Ethan lost clients when word of his unprofessional conduct leaked online, courtesy of an anonymous source, of course. A few months later, I stood in court, signing the divorce papers. Ethan tried to look composed, but couldn't hide the defeat in his eyes. The judge awarded me alimony, the house, and a large settlement. When it was over, he muttered, "You'll regret this, Ava." I leaned in slightly. "I already did when I married you." Haley moved away soon after, unable to face anyone. Last I heard, she'd been fired from her job after I shared her scandalous affair with her boss's husband. Poetic justice. As for me, I thrived. I rebuilt my life, opened my own interior design firm, and bought a new house with money that used to be his. 1 year later, at another family gathering, everyone toasted to Ava's success. My aunt apologized tearfully for Haley's actions. I smiled, telling her it was behind me, though deep down, I knew the satisfaction still burned sweet. Then, just as dessert was served, Ethan showed up. He looked older, broken. "Ava," he whispered, "I made a mistake." I tilted my head, pretending to think. "You made several." He begged for forgiveness, said he missed me, that he couldn't sleep. I looked him straight in the eye and said softly, "That's your punishment. You'll wake up every day remembering what you lost." I've moved on. And I turned my back to him, laughing with my family as he stood there, humiliated, the ghost of his own decisions. Driving home that night, the cool wind brushed my face. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace, real, unshakable peace. Not because I'd hurt him, but because I'd reclaimed the part of me they'd tried to break. Some people think revenge is about destruction. But for me, it was about resurrection. The moment I stopped being a victim and became the author of my own story. And if Ethan or Haley ever wonder how I found the strength to rise, I hope they remember that night, the night I smiled, raised my glass, and burned their lies to ashes in front of everyone who once believed them. After that night, my phone didn't stop buzzing for days. Family members called, texted, messaged on social media, some expressing shock, others cheering me for exposing the truth so boldly. My father, who rarely showed emotion, told me, "I've never been prouder of you, Ava. You did what most people only dream of doing. You stood up for yourself." Those words hit something deep inside me. For years, I'd been the peacemaker, the quiet one who forgave easily. But that night proved I wasn't weak anymore. Ethan, on the other hand, couldn't accept the humiliation. He tried calling me endlessly. I ignored every call. Then came the emails, long, apologetic, pathetic attempts to justify his betrayal. "It just happened," he wrote. "We didn't mean to hurt you." I laughed, bitterly reading those words. Affairs don't just happen. Lies don't just happen. You build them, brick by brick, until the wall you hide behind collapses on you. He even tried to send flowers to my office, hundreds of roses that filled the entire reception area. My employees whispered, amused. I ordered them all thrown out. The florist called, confused. "Ma'am, are you sure?" I said flatly, "Yes. Burn them if you want." I'm allergic to fake apologies. Haley's downfall was even more dramatic. My aunt stopped speaking to her. Her longtime boyfriend dumped her after learning she'd been cheating with my husband. Her reputation as the sweet cousin everyone adored vanished overnight. She tried messaging me once, writing, "I'm sorry, Ava. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I didn't even open it. I blocked her. In the months that followed, I rebuilt everything Ethan had tried to destroy. The divorce gave me more than financial freedom. It gave me clarity. I moved out of the old house, bought a small coastal home overlooking the ocean, and renovated it myself. Every wall I painted, every piece of furniture I picked out, felt like stitching my soul back together. I started sleeping peacefully again. No late-night anxiety, no pretending to be okay beside a man who'd betrayed me. Then one afternoon, I got a call from Ethan's business partner, Chris. "Ava," he said, "I'm sorry to involve you, but Ethan's company is falling apart." I almost smiled. Karma was quicker than I'd expected. Chris explained that after the affair scandal, investors had started backing out. Clients lost trust in Ethan. He'd been trying to salvage everything, but the business was collapsing. A week later, Ethan showed up at my door. He looked exhausted, dark circles, unshaven, desperate. "Ava, please," he said, voice trembling. "I just need someone to talk to. Everything's gone wrong." I stood there, leaning against the doorframe, calm and collected. "And whose fault is that?" I asked softly. He ran a hand through his hair. "I made a mistake. I love you. I always have." I laughed, not cruelly, but genuinely amused. "Love? You don't destroy people you love, Ethan. You use them until they're empty, then you look for someone else to fill the void." His eyes watered. "I lost everything." I looked him dead in the eye. "No, Ethan. You threw everything away." And I closed the door. But I wasn't done yet. Ethan still had his pride, and I wanted that gone too. During the divorce, I had discovered some shady financial dealings in his business. Nothing illegal, but certainly unethical. He'd been moving funds around to make the company look more profitable than it was. I didn't expose it right away. I waited until after the settlement. Then, anonymously, I sent the details to a few business journalists. Within a week, his company's name was all over local news, former CEO under scrutiny for financial misconduct. His investors pulled out entirely. His empire was dust. Meanwhile, my career flourished. The attention from the viral family gathering scandal had made me a local sensation. People admired how I handled it, calm, poised, but ruthless when necessary. I started getting invitations to speak at women's empowerment events. They called me the woman who turned heartbreak into power. One evening, after a long workday, I walked into a cafe downtown. A woman about my age approached hesitantly. "Excuse me," she said, "you're Ava Mitchell, right? The one from the news." I nodded cautiously. "I just wanted to say," she continued, "thank you. Watching you take control of your life gave me courage to leave my cheating husband. You made me believe I could survive too." That moment, it hit me harder than anything else. My revenge had started as pure rage, but it ended as something bigger. My story had become a symbol of survival. A year later, my company opened its second office in Chicago, poetic, considering that was where Ethan and Haley had first betrayed me. The night of the grand opening, I hosted a small gala for investors and clients. Dressed in a sleek black gown, confidence radiating off me, I felt unstoppable. And then, as if fate couldn't resist one last twist, I saw him, Ethan, standing by the door, looking lost. He approached slowly, almost sheepishly. "You look incredible," he murmured. I smiled politely. "Success suits me." He hesitated. "I've been trying to get back on my feet. I was wondering if, maybe we could talk sometime." I sipped my champagne and met his gaze. "About what?" "How to rebuild a life you ruined." "I already did that without you." His shoulders slumped. "I miss you, Ava. I miss what we had." I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice. "You miss the woman who loved you before you became someone she pitied." He blinked, speechless. I added softly, "You taught me something valuable. I don't need anyone to validate my worth. Especially not a man who couldn't even be faithful." I walked away, leaving him standing there among people who now whispered about her ex-husband, the one who lost everything. When I stepped outside, the city lights shimmered like a sea of tiny stars. The night air felt alive against my skin. I thought of that night at the family gathering, the gasps, the shame, the silence. And I realized how far I'd come. Back then, I'd been fueled by fury and heartbreak. Now, I was driven by peace. Revenge isn't always about destroying the other person. Sometimes it's about showing them that their absence means nothing. Ethan and Haley thought they broke me. But in truth, they built the woman who would rise above them. A few months later, I heard through mutual friends that Haley had moved out of state, struggling to find stability. Ethan was working odd consulting jobs, his once proud confidence replaced by quiet bitterness. They both reached out once more, not to apologize, but to reminisce, to test the waters. I didn't respond. Silence, I learned, is the loudest revenge. Now, when I tell this story, whether over a glass of wine with friends or through my YouTube storytelling channel, I don't tell it as a tale of pain. I tell it as proof that betrayal can be a beginning, not an ending. that women are far stronger than those who underestimate them. I still remember Ethan's face at that gathering, pale and trembling under the flickering light as his lies unraveled. That image stays with me not as a scar, but as a reminder. I won. And every morning, when I wake up to the sound of the ocean outside my window, I smile. Because I didn't just survive, I turned my heartbreak into power, my silence into strength, and my revenge into art. They thought they destroyed me, but all they did was make me unforgettable. When I first met Ethan, I thought he was everything I ever wanted. Charming, confident, ambitious, the kind of man who could walk into a room and command attention without saying a word. We met at a business seminar in Seattle. I was there representing my marketing firm, and he was a guest speaker talking about entrepreneurship and innovation. His voice had this calm authority that made everyone listen. When he looked my way during the can day, our eyes locked for a moment longer than they should have. I remember thinking, maybe this is what destiny feels like. He approached me after the event, complimenting my question about branding strategies. One coffee led to another, and before I knew it, we were spending every weekend together. He made me laugh until my sides hurt, sent me morning texts that made my heart skip, and always talked about the future, our future. When he proposed a year later, on a quiet pier under golden sunset skies, I said yes without hesitation. At first, life with Ethan was beautiful. We moved into a modern home near Portland, glass walls, warm wood, minimalist decor. It felt like a dream. We built a rhythm. Morning coffee together, evening walks, Friday dinners out. Everyone said we were the perfect couple. But somewhere along the line, perfection started to crack. Ethan's long work hours became longer. His late-night business meetings turned into missed calls and vague excuses. I told myself not to worry, he was ambitious, and ambition takes time. But deep down, something gnawed at me. He started guarding his phone, closing his laptop when I walked in. When I asked, he brushed it off. "Ava, you're overthinking. You know how much I love you." I wanted to believe him. I really did. Then came Haley. Haley was my cousin. We'd grown up together, inseparable as kids. She was the wild one, loud, fun, unpredictable. We lost touch for a few years when I went to college, but when she moved back to town, she re-entered my life like a storm. "You and Ethan are the dream couple," she'd say at family dinners, eyes sparkling. "He's so lucky to have you." She'd compliment him too, a little too much sometimes. I told myself I was imagining it. One night, during a barbecue at my parents' house, I noticed the way Ethan looked at her. It wasn't a passing glance, it was heavy-charged. I tried to dismiss it, but it haunted me. Over the next few weeks, small things started to click. Haley always happened to be at the same place as Ethan was. She'd text me things like, "Oh, Ethan told me he was meeting clients near my work." Funny coincidence. Every instinct screamed that something was wrong. I started watching. Quietly. I noticed inconsistencies. Ethan's receipts, his gas mileage, his travel logs. It didn't make sense. So, I followed him one night. My heart pounded the entire drive. He said he was meeting investors at a rooftop bar downtown. But when I parked across the street, I saw him laughing hand in hand with Haley. My cousin. My blood. My world went silent. I didn't confront them right away. I went home, sat in the dark, and stared at our wedding photo on the wall. We looked so happy. I remember whispering, "How could you do this to me?" But instead of crying, I felt something cold and sharp inside me awaken. The woman who'd always forgiven, who'd always stayed quiet, died that night. For the next 2 months, I played along. I smiled, cooked dinner, pretended everything was normal, while documenting everything. Texts, photos, emails, bank transfers. Every lie, every secret. I was meticulous, strategic. If Ethan wanted to underestimate me, I'd let him, until I was ready to strike. And that strike came at the family reunion. It was my mother's idea, a big dinner at my aunt's estate. Everyone would be there, cousins, uncles, grandparents, even out-of-state relatives. Ethan and Haley both attended, confident and smug, thinking their secret was safe. Haley wore a red dress that clung to her body like temptation itself, and Ethan couldn't stop glancing at her. I played my part perfectly, calm, affectionate, oblivious. When it was time for toasts, I stood up with a glass of wine. "I'd like to propose something different," I said. The chatter quieted. "Tonight's about family. About truth. About loyalty." My voice didn't shake, it carried power. Ethan smiled, thinking I was about to praise him. Haley beamed. Then I turned on the projector. The first photo appeared, Ethan and Haley, laughing at a hotel bar. Then another, holding hands. Another, kissing in the parking lot. Gasps erupted around the room. My aunt dropped her fork. My father stood, furious. Ethan went pale. Haley's face drained of color. "Loyalty," I said, my tone ice cold, "isn't something you fake. It's something you live." Haley stammered, "Ava, please, it's not what it looks like." "Oh, it's exactly what it looks like," I said sharply. "And everyone here deserves to know." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan tried to grab my arm, but I stepped back. "Don't touch me," I said. "You've done enough." That night, I walked out of that house lighter than I'd felt in years. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just let go. Over the next weeks, I finalized the divorce. Ethan fought hard. He wanted to keep the house, the car, the savings. But what he didn't realize was that I'd already found his weak spots. His company's finances were a mess. I'd kept quiet until court. Then, in one calm moment, I handed over evidence of his hidden accounts and misreported taxes. The judge wasn't impressed. I walked away with the house, half his assets, and full control of my own business. Ethan walked away with nothing but regret. Haley lost everything too. Her job gone, after her employer found out about the scandal that went viral online. My aunt disowned her. She moved to another city, trying to start over. I didn't care. She deserved every ounce of it. But revenge wasn't just about their downfall. It was about my rise. In the months that followed, I poured everything into rebuilding my life. My career exploded, my story inspired thousands of women. I was invited on talk shows, podcasts, and conferences. They called me the woman who exposed betrayal with grace. I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like a survivor, powerful, untouchable. One night, nearly a year later, I got an email from Ethan. "I think about you every day. I wish I could undo everything. Please, can we meet?" I didn't respond. But curiosity got the better of me. I searched his name online. His company had gone bankrupt. Investors were suing him. His LinkedIn showed no updates for months. He looked small, forgotten. A few weeks later, he showed up at one of my speaking events, sitting quietly in the back, watching. When I finished, our eyes met. I didn't flinch. I simply walked past him and said softly, "You made your choice. Now live with it." He didn't follow. He couldn't. Years later, I met someone new, someone kind, steady, and genuine. He knew my story, and instead of being intimidated, he admired it. "You're incredible," he said once. "You turned heartbreak into strength." I smiled, thinking of the girl I used to be, naive, trusting, blind. That girl was gone. The woman standing in her place was unbreakable. Ethan once told me that I'd never survive without him. Funny, I didn't just survive. I thrived. I rose higher than I ever imagined. I built my own empire, my own peace, my own legacy. And every now and then, when I drive past the old house where we used to live, I feel no pain. Only pride. Because the best revenge isn't screaming or fighting, it's living so well that your silence echoes louder than their excuses. He thought he could cheat, lie, and walk away unscathed. He thought I'd crumble. But instead, I made him a cautionary tale. And that, I've learned, is the sweetest revenge of all. I used to believe that love was unbreakable. That when two people promised forever, it actually meant something. But now I know forever can shatter in the blink of an eye. When Ethan and I first met, I was 25, a creative marketing manager climbing my way through long hours and tight deadlines. He was the confident entrepreneur every woman seemed to admire, tall, charming, smooth-talking, the kind of man who could sell a dream to anyone. But when he spoke to me, it felt like he meant it. He said I made him feel grounded. That he'd spent years surrounded by fake smiles, and mine was the first one that felt real. I believed him, Every word, every promise, every touch that lingered a little too long. He became my best friend, my biggest supporter, my everything. The first year of our marriage was magic. We'd wake up in our cozy Seattle apartment with sunlight spilling across the white curtains, him making coffee while I packed lunches. He'd leave love notes on sticky pads, little things like, "You make chaos beautiful," or "Can't wait to see you tonight." Everyone envied us. But love stories like ours, they don't die all at once. They rot slowly. It started small: missed dinners, unanswered texts, vague business trips. Ethan's cologne started lingering later than it should. When I asked questions, his patience thinned. "Ava, you've got to stop being so paranoid," he'd say, looking at me with those tired, irritated eyes. "You know how demanding clients are. Why can't you just trust me?" And I did. I trusted him. Until the day I couldn't. The night everything changed, I was supposed to meet him at a client dinner. He called, saying something urgent had come up. I told him it was fine, that I'd go alone. But something in his tone made my stomach twist. He was too polite, too rehearsed. Later that night, while scrolling through social media, I froze. A friend had posted an Instagram story from a bar downtown. And there he was. Ethan. Laughing. With my cousin Haley. The caption read, "Love is in the air." My blood ran cold. Haley, my childhood partner in crime, my sister in everything but blood. She had a way of taking up space, of drawing eyes without even trying. I always admired her confidence, even envied it sometimes. But in that moment, all I felt was betrayal. Still, I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe it was business. Maybe it was innocent. I texted him, no reply. Called straight to voicemail. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat by the window, staring out at the city lights, feeling like the world I'd built was crumbling. When he came home at dawn, I asked him. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and said, "You're imagining things." That's when I realized liars always smile like that. Over the next few weeks, I watched. Quietly. Every late-night meeting. Every unexplained call. Every just a client dinner. And then, one Thursday night, I followed him. I parked 3 blocks away from the restaurant he said he'd be at. Through the windshield, I saw him, not with clients, not with business partners, but with her. Haley. They sat too close, fingers brushing, her head resting on his shoulder. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just whispered, "Okay. So that's how it is." When I got home, I opened my laptop and began documenting everything. Receipts. Emails. Messages. Dates. Photos. Every lie they thought they could hide. I wasn't going to explode. I was going to plan. For weeks, I said nothing. I smiled through dinners, made his coffee, kissed his cheek before he left for work. All while building my arsenal. Haley had no idea. She'd even call me sometimes, her voice fake sweet. "How's Ethan doing?" He mentioned he's been so busy lately. Busy, all right, with you. Then came the perfect opportunity. My family was planning a grand reunion: cousins, aunts, uncles, the entire clan at my parents' vineyard estate. It was supposed to celebrate my parents' 30th anniversary. And that's when the idea struck me. If betrayal was born in front of family, it would die there too. That night, I rehearsed my smile in the mirror. I picked my calmest dress, elegant, understated. Revenge doesn't scream, it whispers. I arrived hand in hand with Ethan. Haley was already there, pretending she couldn't stop smiling at me. "God, Ava. You look stunning," she said, hugging me tightly, her perfume clawing at my throat. I just smiled back. "You too, Haley." The night went on. Laughter, toasts, wine. I kept my calm, even when Ethan brushed past Haley's shoulder a little too gently. Then, when dessert was served, I stood. "I'd like to say a few words," I began, raising my glass. "About love, loyalty, and honesty." The room quieted. Ethan smiled, proud. Haley glowed beside him. And then I turned on the projector I had discreetly connected earlier. The first image appeared: Ethan and Haley walking hand in hand down a quiet street. A murmur spread across the table. Then another, them laughing over wine. Then another, a hotel elevator embrace. Gasps. Whispers. Silence. Haley's fork clattered to the floor. Ethan's face turned to stone. I looked directly at my mother, who sat frozen in disbelief. "I thought our family deserved to know," I said softly. Haley stammered, "Ava, you don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I cut in. "You just underestimated me." The silence that followed was electric. No yelling. No chaos. Just pure, stunning stillness. Ethan stood, eyes wide, reaching for me. "Ava, wait," but I stepped back, voice steady. "Don't touch me." And then I walked out. Not in tears. Not in anger. In power. That night, I left Ethan for good. What came next wasn't easy. Divorce is never easy. He tried to twist the story, said I was being dramatic, that I was emotional. But emotions don't win court cases. Evidence does. And I had plenty. Every document, every photo, every lie neatly organized. My lawyer was a shark. Ethan had hidden assets, undeclared income, shady transfers, and I had proof. When we went to court, he looked confident at first. But by the end, he looked defeated. I walked away with the house, my business, and the satisfaction of knowing he'd never rise again. His company's reputation tanked after my lawyer exposed his financial fraud. Haley? She lost her job, her friends, and her credibility. Even her parents stopped talking to her. But here's the truth, revenge wasn't about destroying them. It was about restoring myself. The weeks that followed were a blur of freedom. I redecorated the house, took long walks alone, cooked dinner for one, and found peace in silence. For the first time in years, I looked in the mirror and recognized the woman staring back, strong, composed, unbroken. Months later, Ethan emailed me. "I miss you," he wrote. I was stupid. "Please, can we start over?" I laughed. Out loud. The kind of laugh that comes when pain turns into clarity. "No," I whispered to the empty room. "You don't deserve a second chance." A year later, I gave a keynote speech at a women's business summit titled "Rebuilding After Betrayal." I shared my story, not the details, just the message. Sometimes I told the audience, you don't need to scream to be heard. You just need to rise quietly and let success do the talking. Afterward, women came up to me in tears, thanking me. They said my strength gave them courage. I realized my pain had purpose. And then, one evening, as I was leaving my office, I saw him again. Ethan, waiting near the parking lot, looking smaller than I remembered. He said, "Ava, I lost everything." I looked at him, really looked. The man who once thought he could ruin me now looked like a ghost of his former self. "I know," I said calmly. "You taught me how not to." Then I walked away. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about fire or fury. It's about living so beautifully that your existence becomes their punishment. And that night, as I drove home through the city lights, I smiled to myself. He thought he'd broken me. He thought I'd crumble. But all he really did was make me unstoppable. The night of the reunion arrived like a storm, heavy with humidity and tension. The air outside was thick, and inside the grand family estate, every surface gleamed: chandeliers, polished floors, silver trays of hors d'oeuvres. I could hear laughter and clinking glasses, echoes of a family that had no idea a reckoning was about to unfold in their midst. I had spent months planning this, every moment, every word, every reveal. My dress shimmered a deep emerald that caught the light when I moved, a deliberate choice. It was the color of envy, of rebirth, of power reclaimed. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I entered, and conversations paused for a heartbeat. People turned to look, my cousins, uncles, aunts, all wearing smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Then, there they were, Jason and Mara, my ex-husband and my cousin, the traitors who had pretended love was something sacred while they destroyed mine. Jason's face tightened when he saw me, and Mara's lips curled into that smug smile that used to make my blood boil. But tonight, I didn't feel rage. I felt an eerie calm, a deep satisfaction that came from knowing I held all the cards. As the evening progressed, I greeted relatives, accepted their compliments, and let the whispers begin. Everyone knew about Jason and Mara's relationship, but they didn't know the truth about what was coming. I had spent the last year quietly taking over what Jason had left behind. After our divorce, he thought he'd taken everything, the house, the accounts, even our friends. What he didn't know was that I had used his own arrogance to dismantle him piece by piece. Jason had started a construction business years ago, one I had helped him build. I handled the contracts, the accounts, and all the logistics. When we split, he believed I walked away bitter and broken. But I had copies of everything: emails, financial statements, permits, hidden accounts. With that, I built my own firm, Emerald Projects, and I hired the very people Jason had underpaid and mistreated. Within a year, I landed a government contract, the one Jason had spent years trying to get. The best part? Jason didn't even know who owned the company that outbid him. Not until tonight. Dinner began, and my mother, sweet, trusting, always diplomatic, insisted I sit across from Jason and Mara. I smiled and agreed. The tension across the table was electric. Jason couldn't look me in the eyes for more than a few seconds, and Mara fiddled with her napkin, pretending to be unbothered. "So, Jason," my uncle said halfway through the meal, slicing into a steak. "Heard your company lost that big city development deal. Tough break, huh?" Jason's jaw tightened. "Yeah, the client went with someone else. Underbid us. Happens." I sipped my wine, savoring the moment. My aunt chimed in, "Who got it again?" "Some new firm." I set my glass down and smiled sweetly. "That would be mine." The table went silent. Forks paused midair. Jason blinked, then forced a laugh. "Yours?" "You're joking." "Not at all," I said calmly, tilting my head. "Emerald Projects. We're managing the entire build now. Funny thing, I recognize your bid proposal. It was almost word for word identical to what I used to write for you back when we worked together. Guess old habits die hard." Mara's face went pale. Jason stared at me like he'd seen a ghost. "That's impossible," he stammered. "Oh, it's very possible," I replied, voice low and deliberate. "You should really read the fine print next time you sign over company assets during a divorce. You'd be surprised how much control you accidentally left in my hands." The table buzzed with whispers. My relatives shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to be horrified or impressed. But I wasn't finished. I leaned back, letting the satisfaction in my tone drip like honey. "By the way," I continued, "your old accountant called me last month. Apparently, some discrepancies came up in your tax filings. I'm sure it's nothing serious. You know how the IRS can be." Jason's eyes widened. That flicker of panic was all I needed to see. I had filed the anonymous tip myself. Across the table, Mara's mask cracked. "You can't just, you're being vindictive." I smiled. "No, Mara. Vindictive would be me exposing those hotel receipts you left under Jason's name when he was still married to me. Or that loan you took out with his company's collateral. I'm not vindictive, I'm precise." Laughter rippled around the table, low, nervous, but real. My uncle raised his glass. "Well, I'd say it's about time someone taught the men in this family what happens when they underestimate a woman." Jason stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "You'll regret this," he said through clenched teeth. I leaned forward. "You already do." He stormed out, Mara chasing after him, her heels clicking frantically. I stayed seated, enjoying the stunned silence that followed. My mother placed her hand over mine, proud, relieved, maybe even a little shocked. "You planned this, didn't you?" she whispered. I looked at her and smiled softly. "No, Mom. I just stopped letting people walk over me." After dinner, I stepped outside, the night air cool against my skin. The moon hung low, silver light spilling across the driveway where Jason's car had just peeled away. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter than I had in years. The hum of distant laughter from inside the house faded behind me. I had lost everything once: my husband, my cousin, my dignity. But I rebuilt it all from the ashes, stronger, sharper, unstoppable. They had taken my heart and turned it into a weapon, and I had used it to carve my way back to power. Weeks later, Jason's company folded. His reputation tanked, and he quietly moved out of state. Mara disappeared from social media, humiliated and forgotten. As for me, I stood at the top floor of my firm's new office, looking out over the city skyline that glowed under the rising sun. I wasn't the woman they betrayed anymore. I was the woman who thrived without them. Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction, it's about resurrection. And I had risen higher than they could ever reach. When people asked what happened between us, I only smiled and said, "He taught me how to fight dirty. I just got better at it." And in that quiet, satisfying victory, I finally understood you don't need to scream to make them regret it. Sometimes silence and success are the loudest revenge of all. Years passed, but time hadn't dulled the sharp edges of my memory, it had polished them. Each day, I woke up in the penthouse office overlooking downtown Chicago, where the skyline blazed like fire at sunset. I had built Emerald Projects into one of the most respected construction and design firms in the Midwest. What began as revenge had become an empire, one built not out of bitterness, but brilliance. I had turned betrayal into fuel, and every success was a quiet reminder that I was never the victim they thought I was. My name, Lena Carter, had become synonymous with excellence and resilience. Clients came from all over, drawn to my story as much as my results. They didn't know the full truth, of course, but they felt the energy, the confidence of a woman who had survived fire and come out golden. But revenge, I learned, doesn't truly end. It evolves. It was a crisp winter morning when my assistant, Mia, knocked on my office door. "Lena, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent." I looked up from my laptop, mildly annoyed. "Who is it?" She hesitated, then sighed. "Jason Walker." The name hit me like a ghost whispering through the room. For a moment, everything went still. The hum of the city below, the ticking of the clock, even my breath. Jason. My ex-husband. The man who had once promised forever, then broke me without a second thought. "Send him in," I said finally. My voice was steady, calm. He walked in wearing a suit that had seen better days. His once carefully groomed hair was streaked with gray, and the arrogance that used to hang from him like an expensive cologne was gone. He looked smaller somehow, like the world had taken back everything he'd stolen. "Lena," he said, trying for a smile. "You look incredible." "Thank you," I replied, folding my hands. "What brings you here?" He exhaled and rubbed the back of his neck. "I know I'm the last person you want to see, but I need your help." That almost made me laugh. "My help?" He nodded, eyes flicking around the office, the marble floors, the skyline view, the framed magazine covers with my face on them. "My company went under. I tried to start over, but investors pulled out. I've been blacklisted." The industry remembers integrity," I interrupted smoothly. "You should have learned that a long time ago." He swallowed hard, shame flickering in his expression. "I did terrible things to you, Lena. I know that now. But I'm not asking for forgiveness. I need work. A chance. Anything." The audacity was almost poetic. Years ago, he had thrown me away like I was disposable. Now he stood in my office, desperate, humbled, needing me. I rose from my chair and walked slowly to the window, letting him see the reflection of my smile in the glass. "You know," I said softly, "there was a time I dreamed of this. Of you coming back, admitting what you did, asking for help. I thought it would make me feel powerful." "And does it?" he asked quietly. I turned to face him. "No. It makes me feel nothing." He flinched like I'd slapped him. "Please, Lena. I'll do anything. I just want a fresh start." "Jason," I said, stepping closer, my heels clicking softly on the floor. "You already got your fresh start with my cousin, remember?" His face darkened. "That ended years ago. Mara, she left me when the money ran out." "Of course she did. They destroyed me for greed and lust, and now that same poison had eaten them from the inside." It was poetic, really. I studied him for a moment, then sighed. "Fine. I'll give you a chance." He looked up, stunned. "You will?" "Yes," I said, smiling faintly. "My new company, Emerald Renew, focuses on community rebuilding projects. I'm looking for site managers." Relief flooded his face. "Thank you, Lena." "You don't know what this means." I wasn't finished, I interrupted. "You'll be working in one of our new branches. Small town. Middle of nowhere. Minimum pay. You'll start from the bottom, like I did." He hesitated, but nodded. "I'll take it." "Good," I said. "You'll report to Mia tomorrow at 9 a.m. And Jason, yes, don't mistake this for kindness. This isn't forgiveness, it's accountability. You'll finally understand what it means to earn what you take. He nodded, defeated. I understand. When he left, the office felt lighter. I walked back to my desk, my reflection shining in the glass of my office door. For the first time, I didn't feel the need for revenge. I had already won. But life has a way of surprising even the victors. 2 months later, while overseeing a new project in Los Angeles, I got a call from my lawyer. Lena, you're not going to believe this, but your cousin Mara just filed for bankruptcy. Her husband left her, and she's trying to sell her late mother's property to stay afloat. I almost laughed. Is that so? Yes. The property's being auctioned. If you're interested, we can put in a bid. A week later, I stood in the very backyard where Mara and Jason had first humiliated me years ago, the house where my family had once gathered for holidays and where I'd walked in on their affair. The same house was now up for sale. When the auctioneer's gavel hit the podium, I owned it. The first thing I did when I got the keys was walk into the master bedroom, open the windows, and let the light pour in. The air smelled of dust and memory, of betrayal and rebirth. I stood there for a long moment, letting the past settle around me. Then I smiled, turned, and gave the order to my foreman. Demolish it. Every inch. He looked surprised. You want to tear it down? Yes, I said. Some things aren't meant to be renovated. They're meant to be erased. 3 weeks later, the house was gone, reduced to rubble. I replaced it with a sleek, modern building, a women's business mentorship center. I named it the Phoenix Foundation because that's what I had become, reborn from betrayal, thriving in the ashes. When the grand opening took place, reporters swarmed the event, eager to hear about my latest project. Someone asked, Ms. Carter, what inspired you to create this? I smiled at the cameras. Resilience, I said. And the belief that sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying what hurt you, it's transforming it into something beautiful. The applause that followed echoed like closure. Later that night, standing beneath the neon sign of the Phoenix Foundation, I thought of Jason and Mara, their downfall, their absence, their insignificance. I didn't need to see their faces to know they regretted everything. Because in the end, I hadn't just taken revenge. I had rewritten the story. Not as the woman who was betrayed, but as the woman who won. The weeks after that family gathering became an unexpected turning point in my life. For so long, I had carried the weight of betrayal, the sleepless nights, the humiliation, the self-doubt, but after that night, something shifted inside me. I no longer felt small. I no longer felt like the victim in someone else's story. I was the author now, and I was writing my own ending. People started to notice. My confidence wasn't an act anymore, it was real. At work, I landed a huge promotion, one that came with a corner office and a 6-figure salary. The same Mark who used to sneer at my little job was now unemployed, his so-called business crumbling under the weight of his own ego. It was poetic justice at its finest. Meanwhile, whispers about Lily spread through the family like wildfire. My aunt, mortified by her daughter's actions, had cut her off financially. I raised you better than this, she told her, according to my cousin Emma. You've brought shame to this family. Lily tried to play the victim, crying that she had fallen in love, but nobody bought it. Even her friends drifted away. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who stole her cousin's husband. I didn't need to gloat. I stayed silent, graceful, smiling whenever anyone brought them up. That silence spoke louder than any insult could. People respected that. It made me untouchable. But fate wasn't done giving me satisfaction. One afternoon, months later, I received an email. It was from Mark. The subject line read, "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a moment, almost laughing. My curiosity got the better of me, so I opened it. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, it began, but I need to say this. I made a mistake. I thought I wanted freedom, but I only found chaos. Lily isn't who I thought she was. She's been draining me financially and emotionally. I miss you. I miss what we had. You were always the strong one. Please, can we meet? I sat back, reading the words slowly. Every sentence felt like a confession, a surrender. The man who once left me crying on the kitchen floor now sat in the ruins of his own making, reaching for the woman he betrayed. I didn't even feel anger, just amusement. He'd spent years believing I was weak, but weakness doesn't rebuild a life from ashes. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I printed the email and slipped it into a small box, along with the few keepsakes I still had from our marriage. That night, I lit a fire in my fireplace, poured myself a glass of wine, and burned them all, every trace of that chapter. Watching the paper curl into smoke felt like reclaiming the last piece of myself. Days later, I ran into Lily at a local cafe. She looked ruined. Her once perfect hair was messy, her face pale and tired. When she saw me, she froze, like she'd seen a ghost. I smiled politely. "Lily," I said, as if greeting an old acquaintance. She stammered, "I didn't expect to see you here." "Well, life has a funny way of bringing people together," I said, taking a sip of my latte. "How are things?" She forced a smile, but her voice trembled. "Mark and we're not together anymore. He cheated on me." I blinked slowly, hiding the smirk tugging at my lips. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said gently. "It must be awful to go through something like that, especially with family." The look in her eyes was priceless, a mix of shame, rage, and realization. I wasn't cruel. I didn't need to be. The universe had already done the work for me. When I left the cafe, I felt weightless. The past no longer had a hold on me. My revenge wasn't a single moment of triumph, it was the life I built afterward. The success, the peace, the quiet satisfaction of knowing that those who tried to destroy me ended up destroying themselves. Over time, I started sharing my story, not out of spite, but to inspire others. I created a podcast, Unbroken, where women could share stories of betrayal, strength, and comeback. Within months, it went viral. People from all over the country reached out, saying my voice had given them courage. And every time I sat behind that microphone, I thought of that girl I used to be crying on the bathroom floor, thinking her world was over. Now, I was the woman who rose above it all, who found her power and never let it go again. A year later, at the next family reunion, my aunt approached me. "You've turned your pain into purpose," she said with tears in her eyes. "That's the greatest revenge of all." And she was right. Because true revenge isn't about making someone else suffer. It's about reclaiming your joy, your dignity, and your story. As the evening went on, I caught sight of Lily in the corner, alone, sipping a drink. Our eyes met for a moment. I gave her a polite nod, not out of forgiveness, but out of closure. Then I turned away, laughing with my cousins, my heart finally light. Mark and Lily had tried to break me. Instead, they became the foundation of my greatest transformation. Years later, life had moved on, but I hadn't forgotten. Not out of bitterness, but because the past had become my greatest teacher. I learned that revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes, it's about rising so high that those who wronged you can only watch from below. Ryan and Claire eventually divorced. The very foundation of their relationship had been built on deceit, and deceit has a way of rotting everything it touches. I heard through mutual family members that Ryan's business collapsed after several bad investments, ones he made trying to prove he could match my success. Claire left him shortly after, taking what little he had left. Poetic, isn't it? As for me, I thrived. My event planning company expanded nationwide, and I opened a second office in Los Angeles. My name, Elena Brooks Events, became known for luxury and excellence. I bought a home overlooking the ocean, peaceful and far away from the noise of betrayal. The final closure came one Thanksgiving when my family gathered again, in my home this time. Ryan wasn't invited, of course, but fate has a sense of humor. He showed up unexpectedly, disheveled, eyes filled with regret. He asked if we could talk. I looked at him, the man who once thought he could shatter me, and smiled politely. "There's nothing left to say, Ryan. You made your choice. I just made mine count." And with that, I closed the door. Inside, laughter echoed through the house. My family, my real family, the ones who stood by me through it all. The warmth, the glow, the life I had rebuilt, it was all mine. That night, as I watched the sunset from my balcony, I felt a calmness I hadn't known in years. Revenge wasn't about ruining them. It was about reclaiming me. And I had done exactly that. The years that followed felt like a second life, one where I finally got to breathe freely, without the weight of betrayal pressing on my chest. Time had sharpened me, not hardened me. I wasn't the naive woman who once cried herself to sleep wondering why the people I loved most had destroyed me. I was stronger now, calm, self-assured, untouchable. Ryan's downfall became almost poetic. The man who once strutted around family gatherings with smug pride ended up a ghost of himself, jobless, lonely, forgotten. Claire, too, had vanished into obscurity. The cousin who betrayed me for temporary thrill was now nothing more than a whisper in family gossip. When I heard she'd tried reaching out to apologize, I didn't even bother to respond. Forgiveness didn't require conversation, it required peace, and I had already found mine. The family gatherings that once made me anxious became moments of quiet victory. People no longer looked at me with pity, they looked at me with admiration. They whispered to one another, "She made it. She built all this on her own." I didn't need validation, but hearing it reminded me how far I had come. One summer evening, as I hosted a grand family reunion at my new vineyard estate, I looked out at everyone laughing, drinking, and dancing under the fairy lights. It struck me, this was the life I had always deserved. Not the one filled with lies, manipulation, and betrayal, but one built on strength, honesty, and self-respect. When my mother hugged me and whispered, "You did it, sweetheart." "You won," I smiled, but deep down, I knew winning wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving myself right. I had taken pain and turned it into power. I had taken humiliation and transformed it into success. And the sweetest part of it all? I never had to destroy them. They destroyed themselves trying to keep up with the woman they once thought was too weak to fight back. So, when I think back to that night, the night I caught Ryan and Claire together, I no longer feel rage. I feel gratitude. Because that moment was the death of the old me and the birth of the woman who would go on to own her destiny. Life has a strange sense of justice. Sometimes revenge doesn't come in shouting or breaking, it comes quietly, wrapped in peace, success, and a smile that says, "I made it without you." And as I stood under the stars that night, the soft wind brushing through my hair, I whispered to myself, not in anger, not in triumph, but in calm certainty, "You thought you broke me, but you built me."